So Harry, I listened to your podcast. I listened to 10 episodes in one sitting. I mean, it was crazy. And the thing that stood out to me is that you're describing this woman who is a con artist by every description, yet it sounds like part of you is still in love with her.
I want to clarify that for you. First of all, thank you for going down the rabbit hole and doing 10 in a sitting. That's a lot by anyone's standards. I want you to keep in mind a couple things, especially episode 1 and episode 2. What you're hearing is Harry 2 or 3 days after he found out that Rachel was lying. Okay? So at that point, I am fresh off of thinking that the woman I love more than I love anything in the world is in the hospital, weighs 66 pounds, has had multiple brain surgeries, is paralyzed, has a colostomy bag, and no memory of the last 10 years. So all I am is a guy that was a side piece to her. All these things lies. And then one day out of the blue, 563 days later, I find out that she's lying about everything. And what you hear in episodes 1 and 2 are my therapeutic writings because I couldn't talk to anybody. So was I still in love with her at that point? No one has asked me that question. And the answer is, yeah. Episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, I was probably still very much in love with her and heartbroken.
And I can't remember because I don't have it in front of me, but you almost mentioned that it started off as a love letter to her in a way, and it all had a different title, right? Like it's called Rachel Cancer Scam, but what was the original title for this?
The title of episode 1 is Harry Loved Rachel, because the series of stories I wrote to her while she was in the hospital were titled Harry Loves Rachel. And I wrote them as a daily love letter. The way you just put it is beautiful. It's how I describe it. I wrote this series of letters to Rachel every single day. I wrote 80 of them, and they were about our future, about things we had done in the past, about just life and being in love. And by the way, I had never written a story in my life. I had never written a love letter in my life. And this cancer thing with her turned me into a different guy. And I wrote Harry Loves Rachel, and I would send them to her every single day. Are you ready? It was like a show we were watching together. I'd record it in the morning, and then I'd send it to her, and we'd listen at bedtime together in separate places. It was romantic. It was beautiful. It was sweet. And then when this all came out, I thought, son of a bitch. And that's when I thought, I'm going to do something. It's going to be called Harry Loved Rachel. Because I discovered my voice. I know this is going to sound silly to you because you sit here listening to my voice. And I do read books and I do get paid to do what I do with my voice. But I never told stories like Harry Loves Rachel or the Rachel Cancer Scam prior to doing this. I learned about pacing and about storytelling and pausing and saying, I waited my whole life for the perfect woman. And Rachel was that woman. And, I learned how to do that. That's the silver lining in this, Javier. Think about this for a minute. I never told stories, and all of a sudden, I'm writing a daily love letter. And by the way, I was recording those every single day. If you were to listen to all of them together, it would take you 26 hours to listen to those 80.
Yeah, that's crazy. And, I want my listeners, because my podcast is an audio podcast, and Harry is a tough looking dude, right? You got like tattoos, right? You're a strong guy. I mean, if I came across you in public, I probably wouldn't have, thought that somebody like you could be so vulnerable to a woman that had you wrapped around her finger.
I'm 6'1", I weigh about 240 pounds. I've been tattooed 15 times. I ride a Harley Davidson. I've been in martial arts for a long time. I have a great resting bitch face. And I'm a guy that people generally will look at and go, I don't know that I want a part of this, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm also really a good guy. I'm not that guy. Like, I have a pit bull whom I adore, the sweetest soul. But he's the kind of dog that one might look at and go, I'm going to cross the street, or I'm not going to let my kid pet that dog. Like, and I feel like he and I, Max and I, are together for a reason. Like, it's serendipitous that we're together. And the thing about this experience and what it has taught me is that, you can take all the martial arts classes you want. You can take all of the classes about being a good speaker or having confidence in Dale Carnegie, or, relationships, and be an expert at relationships and be a Dr. Phil or an Oprah. But the one thing that we cannot protect is our heart. And you give your heart to someone, and that's what I did to her and with her. She would say to me, Javier, and this makes me sick. I just found this the other day. She, at the beginning, when we first picked each other in November, and I fell madly in love with her, she said to me at one point, "You are the greatest gift of my life." She knew what to say to me to reel me in, right? Think about how powerful that statement is.
She tells you that it was always you, right?
She says it was always me. After we picked each other, she would say to me, "Oh, my Harry, it was always you for me." When I read Where the Crawdads Sing for her, which is one of her favorite books, I read this line that Kaya says to Tate, where she says, "Tate, it was always you for me." I wanted to vomit. I'm like, oh, you plagiarized. You plagiarized that line. Those things, in a way, bring me sadness. I think I'm healed from it, but sad that I fell for it, sad that I wasted this love that I was capable of giving and also receiving. Like, as a man, there's a part of this story. You describe me as big, tough, whatever you don't want to mess with. But with this, I fell for it. This love brought me to my knees. And I'm telling my story not because I hate her, not because I want revenge against her. People online are so mean, like, get over it. She moved on. No, you don't get it. This is a cautionary tale. This is what can happen to us if we don't have a sense of we teach self-awareness in martial arts. We teach, when you're on the street, be aware. I'm never anywhere, by the way, just as a thing about me, as it relates to martial arts. Even if I'm at a friend's house, if I'm in a group of people, I'm always looking at that group of people going, boy, if the shit hits the fan, who am I going after? It's my own training in my head, even though these are people I love. You know what I mean? Being self-aware, situational awareness. And I had none with Rachel.
Well, she disarmed you because the things that she was saying was what everybody ultimately wants, right? Like, you got what everybody wants, but you fell in love with the equivalent of ChatGPT. And I mean, let's go back to when you first met her, because this is a relationship that spans 20 years, 20 plus years probably, right? And it happened in ways that are untraditional, and that's what real life is like, right? Like, you don't meet a girl and then fall in love and then get married. Life is messy. And so talk to us about, like, the first time you met Rachel and how it all started.
Messy is messy. I moved across the country in 2001. I got to Vegas on January 4th. In April, I made a business trip to Houston. And I was single. I hadn't had any luck meeting people. I made a very good living. It was like that line in Heat with Robert De Niro, you don't keep anything in your life that you can't walk away from in 15 minutes or less. Right? That was my motto. I hadn't been married at that point. And I thought, I'm going to get some company when I go to Houston, the female company. And I set this date up with a girl named Madison. And, I hadn't done that before. I didn't know. I had no idea. Like, you don't get the girl that's in the picture. Like, I was naive to that, but I thought, I'm going to do it. It's a couple $100. What, you know? And then I get there and I meet her and she walks through the door. Javier, and I swear to God, like, she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Like, 21 years old, at the height of her beauty, winning beauty pageants, tall and sweet, like the sweetest.
And let's talk about that, because she was working on as an escort when you met her, but prior to that, I mean, just a couple of years before that, she was competing in Miss Texan USA, right?
She was competing at that time. Wasn't it just a couple of years before that? She was in it in 1998. She was in another one in 2021 after I met her.
Oh,
she was
okay.
in one. When I was doing the discovery and the uncovering of her scams, one of the things I did just 5 months ago was I reached out to the Miss Texas USA and the Miss Teen Texas pageant, and I said, this is who I am, and I'm investigating a former, winner, runner-up of your pageants, and I gave them her name, and I gave them the years, and they didn't call me the next day. They sent me a text, and they said, Harry, thank you for reaching out. We don't know anybody by that name, and anyone responsible for the pageant at that time is long gone. And I wrote back, this pissed me off. Like, wait a second. If you don't know who she is, why is she on your website? When she was younger, her dad died in 1989. This is verified. And she ended up wanting to go into pageants when she was a teenager. And her mother put her through all these programs. They put them through finishing programs, right? So she learned how to be, I think she got rid of her Texas accent because she doesn't have one. And I think she went to finishing programs that helped her to be the woman she became. She just used it for malevolence, right? She didn't go through these programs to just be delightful at pageants. She went through them, and then she took that knowledge and she used it for evil. She was disarming. She was charming. She was smart. And she was just so nice to me. Like, and maybe I was desperate to just be with someone that was going to be nice. I was looking for an hour of something nice. And we both had such a good time that when it was over, she gave me her real name. She gave me her actual phone number. And then I saw her multiple times after that without the exchange of any money.
So you have now crossed into a different realm, right? You're dating?
And by the way, she used that. She used that in a way to say, well, you've always been my Harry since the beginning. It was always you for me. I just didn't realize it, right? That started in 2001. I would see her. She moved out of Houston in September of 2001, and then I would see her in Los Angeles because there were 40 minutes wheels up to wheels, to touchdown from where we are. And I saw her a bunch of times. I brought her to Vegas. We spent time with friends of mine. I mean, it was, there was no escort John relationship at that point. It was not boyfriend girlfriend, but it was dating.
Yeah,
casual. Thank you.
And so this happens. How long does that go on?
It goes on for about a year, maybe a year and some change. We saw each other a number of times. Rachel married Mark in May 27th of 2002. They realized that his divorce wasn't finalized, so they went back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, to Vegas in May of 2003. And then Rachel at some point goes to see Bobby in Flint. Bobby breaks off their affair, learning that Rachel is married, I believe, but Bobby brought her to a bar where Brian was working. The narcissist hates to lose more than they love to win. So what did she do after Bobby broke it off? She and a girlfriend get on a plane and they go back to Flint. She starts a thing with Brian. And then several months later, she and Brian are married. And that lasted for 3 years. It took poor Brian, I spoke to him, it took poor Brian almost 3 years to get divorced from Rachel.
From a creative, this is not for the podcast, but out of curiosity, because the podcast is just you telling the story, right, as a narrator. Why was it a conscious decision not to interview everybody?
I tried to get everybody. I begged and I pleaded to get everybody. There are only a few people that have participated. There'll be more interviews this season, but I got Rachel's daughter. I got Rachel's husband. I've got who lived with Mark and Rachel in 2011, and then I have this other guy who had an affair with her. Mark's mother-in-law will talk. There are interviews, but and Mike Cherry, who she faked pregnancy with in 2016, he's on season 2, but there aren't enough. Todd, the first husband, agreed to come on. The first boyfriend that she sent the fake ultrasound to, that was her sister Sherry's, I talked to both of them. They wouldn't come on. I have 2 women from the airport that are on season 2. So there are multiple interviews.
So I haven't gotten that.
But
far.
yeah, just so you know. And Brian, I begged. I mean, the guys that she's, fucked over, won't come on. People that are part of this story in a bad way, they don't want to come on. They don't want their voices.
Well, nobody likes to be made a fool, right? Nobody likes to admit that they were duped. And I mean, that's why it takes a lot of courage to, as any victim, to come forward, right? Because it's like, you think you're smarter than that, and then you're like, damn, a lot of people that I talk to are like, I was so stupid. And it's like, no, this could happen to anybody. You don't understand. You are you're like out skilled by these people. These are the best of the best.
You're dealing with a person in Rachel that's a high-level con artist and scammer. She is so evolved that she can run multiple scams at a time, at the same time on different people. And part of the anxiety, again, you touched on something that gets me thinking and the wheels spinning. The podcast was released on October, I think, 10th last year. So we're almost, at the time we're sitting here doing this interview, we're like 11 months forward from when the podcast premiered. But the night before, I was sitting out on my patio. My one vice is I smoke cigars. And if I'm left alone with no adult supervision, I can smoke 4 or 5 a day. Like, I'll just be hanging out with the boys, and we smoke and we talk and we eat bad food, and like, it's just our thing.
It's fun. It's relaxing. You had this encounter with an escort, right? And it turned into not an escort relationship. It turned into almost like, a casual relationship, and life goes on. You don't hear from this woman again. We know that in between she's marrying all these guys, but how did you reconnect with? You would think that once you parted ways, that you would never see this woman again. How did she react?
I didn't think I would. I got married. I helped to raise a stepson. I never had any biological kids, and that relationship, one thing led to another. But there was a reason for me to go looking elsewhere. Suffice it to say that there was evidence that told me that, that I'd be okay in doing that. And I don't believe I'm a cheater, but just so you understand that. And I never got Rachel out of my head, Javier. This was one of those things where there was always something about her, how sweet and how disarming she was with me. And I thought, I'm going to find her. And this was early days of social. I get on Facebook and I find her. How are you? How are you? And then one thing leads to another, and it's, Harry, what are you looking for? And I thought long and hard. And I said, I think happiness is what I'm looking for. And we continued to talk. She also, during this time, started to share some stuff with me, which laid the foundation for where the entire story would go. To me, everything in this story happened in 2012. It's almost like I could start in 2012, give a little thumbnail sketch of the early part of it, and then in 2012, when I connect with her, she begins to share stuff with me. She begins to share that the second daughter is a product of an SA, and that was a brutal attack. And then she indicates that she's not happy in her marriage. Her husband is abusive, and she begins to paint Mark as this abusive man. And I, the protector in me, wanted to protect. I wanted to, it didn't matter to me that he was abusive. I'd come see her, and I don't really care. Like, what's he going to do to me? That attitude. And then at one point, I ended up seeing her at some point, maybe a year after. It took a year to see each other. She came to Vegas. And then I am sitting home one day, and I get a message, I think on my phone, from her phone. It's text, and it's her friend Laura, who indicates that Rachel's in the hospital. You know, she got beaten up by Mark. And I ended up getting several of those messages. And at one point in time, I started to get messages from Laura directly. And I think I have a steel trap, as you hear in the podcast. I know I talked to Laura. Within the last 6 months, I skip traced the phone number, which I never did prior for Laura. Laura's phone number is registered to Rachel, which was like a eureka mic drop. I mean, there's so many of those within this story. Like,
so who are you talking to?
Who am I talking to? So the friend, and this plot thickens, this plot line of what she did thickens. I think I'm talking to Rachel's friend. And I said, oh my God, what happened? And blah, blah, blah. And, you know, she said she got beaten up, and then she attempted to, you know, commit self-harm, and she's in the hospital. And I know that you mean a lot to her because there are these messages, and she has, you know, some emoji next to your name. And I thought, well, I want to talk to her. Is it okay for me to call? She said, I'll give her the phone. You can call. At any rate, you know, it's all this nonsense. Just playing on me. There was never any hospital stay. There was never any beating by Mark. And then we talk and we connect again. And then you fast forward a year, and then I get another message from Laura that she's been beaten up badly. And now when they open her up, this cancer's gotten even worse. There was cancer the first time they found it. And so I have this communication with her. I said, is it okay to call? Yeah, you can call. We hang up. I text Laura back, and I said, you know, I'm worried about her. I'm worried about Mark. I'm going to come and deal with Mark. And Laura said, I don't think you should do that. I don't think it's smart. You don't want to end up in trouble. And I just, you know, the protective me kicked into gear, and Rachel literally had to, it was almost like Rachel switched characters, as if Laura gave her the phone and she said, please don't come here. Please don't come. Like worried that something was going to happen. Not worried, you know, really worried that her lie would be exposed. And that's when, you know, this character that we won't spend a lot of time on, Bobby, gets really introduced in my part of the story, where she said, Laura said, don't worry about Rachel. She's got a new boyfriend. His name is Bobby, and he wants to marry her. And then she runs that plot line on me. So for the next 3 years, Rachel and Bobby are together. I get married again. I don't have any communication really with her. A little bit. She sends some pictures. And then at one point, after my second marriage, right around the time it's ending, Rachel writes to me and said, Bobby's fathered another child, and I'm leaving the home, and I'm filing for divorce immediately. And then after that, she sends me a message and said, 3 months later, Bobby's passed away, suffered an overdose. That opened the door for Rachel and I to spend some time together, to see each other. We did that a little bit once or twice. During that time, I think one of those things happened where Rachel couldn't see me for whatever reason. Her life interfered with it. That's where she made up the story of her sister getting killed in the car accident, like 2019. Laura, in season 2, one of the tragedies, one of the people that Rachel killed off was Laura. I think she didn't.
Oh, is this
same Laura?
Oh,
but when Rachel is in the hospital, she's creating all these other little life tragedies to make me feel bad. And at one point, after she's in the hospital,
in 2000.
yeah, and she says, "Hey, you remember my friend Laura? Well, she's got colon cancer," and literally had her committing suicide the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's I wasn't sure if that was like because I don't remember hearing that.
It's so Javier. I used to be able to explain this story in 90 seconds, and now it's
well, because that's what I like about your process of going through this is like you're discovering new things and layering, and like, you know, you lived one reality and now you're like piecing it all together, and that's what it felt like listening to your.
And what I like about this interview versus other interviews I've done, and I've done some interviews that I had a great time doing, but I feel like it's one investigator talking to another. In a sense, I know that you dig in. When we talked about doing this, just a little behind the scenes for those that want some behind the scenes, when we found each other, we have mutual friends in Marcus.
Yeah.
Right, and Marcus and Reggie, right? Yeah. And we never talked about it, but we both know the same guys. And they said, hey, this pretend podcast would be good for you. And I said, that's funny. I reached out,
Oh, you reached out before they suggested it?
And then you and I got connected that way. And what I loved about the genesis of this thing, which has happened over a few weeks, is that you wanted receipts. You wanted to, it's almost like geometry. You wanted to prove it out before you talked to me, before you put your reputation on the line. And I love that because, as you saw, I'll send you whatever you want. If you agree to not do certain things.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you the opposite. I've had the opposite happen. I'm working on a story right now, and this happens a lot. They're like, oh, you really don't want to talk to this other person. Like, don't talk to this other person. Like, when people tell me that, that's like a red flag. And when they are cagey about, like, handing things over, I'm like, why are you cagey about handing a public document over to me? I mean, it's like public. I could go get it if you want me to, and that's usually.
I would even say, listen, I have Rachel's new phone number. You could call Rachel. The problem is that, and you can do that, and I'll offer that to you. You can reach out to her. I don't want.
Wouldn't you want that on your show, though?
No. And you know why?
Yeah.
Because I lived 23 years of knowing that everything that comes out of her mouth is a lie. I know what she's going to say to you. I know what she's going to say to you.
Sometimes there's like no value,
One of the things that set me off when this first launched was that she was telling the girls at the airport, I don't even know who this man is. Mark hired him. Like, I got a tattoo of your initials on my chest. I have intimate videos of us. I have pictures of you and I in Santa. Like, I have, like, oh yeah, I got the receipts.
That's okay. So I didn't want to tell you this right away because, like, I didn't want to derail us. But she reminds me of a female Frank Abagnale. Do you know who Frank Abagnale is?
Yeah, he was Catch Me If You Can.
He's Catch Me If You Can. So remember, he was a pilot, doctor, lawyer, professor, and there's a guy named Mark that used to be his manager that he now claims that Mark hired me to do this expose on him.
Right.
Like, it's so funny. Like, the parallels. She's like the female Frank.
These people. But, I don't like to stereotype people, but these people, you people, that do this to people like me and others have these certain hallmarks, and they're used throughout the cons. She just learned how to be a con. That's all. And listen, I'd love for her to talk to you, but I wouldn't be nervous about it because I could tell you in advance she's going to.
I wasn't even going to go.
No, it's fine. But my feeling is that you would have a conversation with her. She would say, listen, he's a liar. He's a stalker. Right. He was obsessed with me. And then I would go, okay, Javier, let's play another game. Let me give you 2 years of some partially redacted text messages between Rachel and I that I couldn't Photoshop because, number one, I don't use Photoshop. You see how I redact things. I use the pen and the phone like I'm fucking primitive. Like, so I know what she would do, and it would bother me to some degree to hear her say, like, he's a liar or he's obsessed or whatever. And then I'd realize, this is who you're dealing with. Look at who you're dealing with.
Well, and I think that the pattern says more than any claims that she would make. Like I talk to a lot of, like, the con artists that I cover, and it's always it's denial, deflect, So, oh well, yeah, he's saying this about me, but did you know this about him? Like, it's that kind of stuff. So
there were things I'm not proud of. There were moments that I'm not proud of in this relationship. Yeah. I held the podcast over her head. I wanted to see her. I wanted to talk to her, but I had this thing. And it was, if I look at what and how I behaved after she was caught, there are a couple of things I'm not proud of. And one of them is that I used the possibility of this podcast early on as currency to say, I have this podcast and I'm ready to release it. Just talk to me. Just 563 days in the hospital. Don't you think you owe me something? And she would say, well, that's where you're wrong. I don't owe you anything. Your perspective is I owe you. It's as preposterous as when I would say to her, can I ask you some questions about the hospital stay? And she would say, okay. Okay, my Harry, go ahead. And I'd get like 3 or 4 questions in, and then she would say something like, well, if you're going to continue to treat me like the liar, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, you know why the fuck we're here, right? We're doing Q&A right now because you're the liar. You're the liar. Let's diagram it out.
Yeah. And really really crazy big lies, and we stopped at the cancer because now you learn through Laura that she has cancer. And what happens next?
Listen, I think what happens next is fairly simple, but I think the why is almost a more important question, if I can do that first. And I think what she was doing was she was in a way testing me. She knew I would stick around. She knew I would be in her corner, knowing she got beat up prior. She wanted to see how far she could take it. So she said, not only did she get beaten up badly, but she has cancer. And I think she was testing to see if I would stay by her side in some way. Even though we weren't a couple, even though I wasn't in the same city, this laid the foundation for what would be to come. She could always go back to cancer, and she could always go back to Mark as a horrible person. And that's what she traded on over the next 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it was.
Yeah. And so then that was in 2012. And then in 2014, you're still like interacting with her. Remind me where you are in the country. Are you like
I'm still here in Vegas. Those years, it's almost unimportant to the story. I saw her a couple times during that time at different points in time. One of those times is when she killed her sister off. To me, nothing of substance happened during that period of time. It was almost, you know how they'll say, well, you know, you're watching, you know, I'm obsessed with true crime. So I'll watch these shows about serial killers, and they build a timeline, and they go, well, from 2017 to 2019, our killer, our unsub, was dormant. Rachel was dormant in a way during a portion of this. And in 2021, the summer of 2021 is really when she activated again. She started to write me out of the blue. I'd like to see you. I'm thinking about you. Maybe I'll book us a spa in Sedona. What are you doing? What's your schedule? I was back home in Boston. She was in Oklahoma. One of these pictures she sent me. She was in Oklahoma with Mark, by the way, and one of their girls. But she was texting me. She had a history of texting me and sending me pictures when she was away alone, taking care of her girls, but she was really with Mark. Mark and I compared notes later on that trip. And we settled on August 27th to meet in Santa Barbara. You know, literally, just past the anniversary of that as we sit here, you know, right now, 4 years ago, 2021. And we meet in Santa Barbara, and I got the hotel. I was waiting for her. And Javier, when she got to the hotel and she said, I'm coming up the stairs and I'll see you in a minute, I walked out in the hallway, and I hadn't seen her in several years. And I remember standing there looking at her going, she's still beautiful. She's still really beautiful. And like there was a hug and a kiss, and it was a different meeting from the beginning. And I don't know if I was just vulnerable or what, but I was just like, this is really good. And I think the wheels were spinning even before dinner that like maybe this could actually turn into something beyond just friends with benefits. And we had an amazing night filled with her lies, filled with I'm a lawyer, I'm going to be in the Kristen Smart case, I own 3 homes, I real estate sales,
Yeah, so help, because the audience is going to have a hard time with this, you know, right. Because you meet her, she's into pageants, but she's also an escort, and now, you know, she has this dormant period where you don't really see her from, you know, like the early like 2012
Yep.
maybe, or to 2021, almost 10 years later. And in that time period, she has like amassed a hell of a resume.
So let me
right?
give you the
Kinda-
history on that, so the audience understands it.
Yeah.
When I met her in 2001, she wanted to always go to law school. The plan was to do some sort of classes so that she could get to the point where she would take the JD, which is the degree you get when you become an attorney. So she was working towards that. In maybe a year or so later, she said she was going to get a nursing license so that she could pay for law school. So she had these two things in her background that she worked from the beginning with me. One was becoming a nurse, and the other was law school. Law school to me was plausible because it took her a long time, but she got it. She passed the bar, and she went to go work for this never husband's father in his firm. And she also had a nursing license, an LVN license, according to her. So when we met in August of 2021, it wasn't like she just miraculously had become a lawyer and become a nurse and become this woman. She had these things set up in the plot line. So we sit down, I'm like, tell me about your life. I'm a lawyer, I'm doing real estate law, I'm doing a bunch of deals, and, are you a true crime fan? Of course I am. And she said, the Kristen Smart case, and she lays the groundwork that she is a friend of Dan Dow, who's the district attorney in San Luis Obispo, and Dan thinks so much of her as an attorney, a real estate attorney, that he invites her to sit second chair in the Kristen Smart case. I'm like, wow, I don't know anything about the law, but holy hell. So she lays that groundwork. And I have no reason not to believe her. We have a great dinner. We have a lot of communication. There's a bar downstairs. We were at Brophy Brothers in Santa Barbara, a great spot. And we go downstairs and have some drinks at the bar, and we're just flirty and fun. And then we're waiting for our Uber, and we're in the parking lot. And I said to her, if it wasn't for proximity, I would be all in. And I think we should consider how to find our way as a couple, if that's of interest to you. And that was my approach. There wasn't a full court press. It wasn't like, I need to be with you, you need to be my girl. It wasn't like no obsession. It was just like, we've always been attracted to each other. There's always been some level of love and respect there. Why not? This is how good relationships start. A good foundation. Except this foundation was built on not concrete, but it was built on quicksand with lies.
Well, and from your perspective, it was
Sure.
I mean,
I'm not gonna defend myself. You can defend me. I'm not gonna defend myself. I know now, like, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right?
well, and that's why romance scams are so successful, because they bypass your defenses. So now we're in 2021, like you said, you reconnect with her, and now she has this like successful career. Is it too early to talk about her other careers?
No, not at all. It's gonna need some setup if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So we have the date in August, and then some time passes, and during this time she had sent me a message saying, "Listen, I can't do this with you anymore. I need to know what I'm capable of. I want to love and be loved." She does that thing. We do the Billy Bush thing, and then I can't get her out of my head. So in November, beginning of November, I texted her. I said, "I need to see you." I had to get it off my chest, Javier. I needed to say, "Listen, I want to do this." And then we do that. We meet in Santa Barbara. We have that discussion. And then within a month and a half of that, on December the 19th, I find out that she's pregnant and she has cancer on the same day. Okay? That's a Reader's Digest, Harry Rachel relationship for dummies explanation, but we do a whirlwind between August and November, decide to be together, and then 45 days later on the same day, she says, "I have cancer and I'm pregnant." And by the way, 2 days prior to that, and I didn't put this in the story,
Yeah.
I proposed to her.
Or you proposed to her. Okay.
Imagine that. You proposed to her. I didn't even look at it like this. My producer, Matt, said, something's like a month ago. He says, "Something's driving me fucking crazy." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You know that you asked her to marry you on December 17th, and then on December 19th, she tells you she's pregnant and she's got cancer. Like, you realize the setup was right there?" And I said, don't ever call me again. Who's this? New phone. Like, no. So she decides she doesn't want to go through treatment. We have this back and forth. And then she agrees to take treatment. She has to go to Mexico on a girls' trip, as she said, in January. January 18th, she leaves. She's supposed to be gone for 10 days. And she's going to take the chemo pill, which will keep the baby safe, but she can do chemo. She can start chemo. Well, one thing leads to another, and she gets COVID, and she's very sick from the chemo pill and being pregnant, and she loses the baby while she's in Mexico. And then she's, got the COVID thing, and she's stuck. That's where Billy Bush enters. And I call Billy Bush, and I say, I need help getting her out. And Billy makes some phone calls. And then he is the first giant red flag when he calls me back, and he says, hey, bud, your girl's not in the hotel. I said, there's no way.
And how does the nurse thing come into play?
The nurse, there are two pieces to the nurse thing. She claims that she got an LVN and worked as a nurse to support herself through law school and would pick up some shifts and extra money, single mom before. But when Rachel went to go work at the airport for American Airlines, which takes place beginning in September of 2022. So for the purposes of your timeline, Javier, and I know you're good with the timeline, Rachel gets admitted to the hospital on June 5th, 2022, according to her story with me. Ends up in protective isolation starting in July. Well, what she was really doing was plotting an assignment at the airport, working for American Airlines, which she takes in September of 2022. She begins to work at the airport, San Luis Obispo County Airport, for Piedmont and American Airlines.
Is this part true?
100% true.
Okay.
This is the fake pilot's license. This is where that comes out. She goes there, begins working, realizes she can fly anywhere in the world she wants, and to Rachel, her travel is her currency. And being able to get free travel benefits is currency. If I accomplish one thing in this, it'll be getting her fired from American Airlines. Because they're allowing a woman who's got a fake, falsified federal document on her person. There have been 3 separate federal investigations, 2 with the FAA, 1 with the TSA. I've cooperated in all 3 of them. And they can't prove. The government is not willing to fight and prove that a digital copy of a forged federal document is an actual forgery.
So she's actually a pilot right now?
She told people she's a pilot.
Oh, she told people.
She said to people at the airport, listen, I'm a pilot. I'm a helicopter pilot. I fly for Mercy Air. I'm also a trauma nurse. That's the scam she was running simultaneously to me. Telling the girls at the airport she's a pilot. Telling them that she's a nurse. And they're like, holy cow, she's a trauma nurse for Mercy Air and she's a helicopter pilot. Like, she got hero status immediately. And she's working with us throwing bags? Yeah. Well, she's doing that so she can get the benefits. And she said, I'm doing this so I can get the benefits. And I need the extra money. I'm a single mom. And I see you shaking your head, and everyone else that hears it shakes their head. And I shook my head when I heard the story. And then one of the girls at the airport, after the whole story broke, sent me a picture of a message exchange she had with Rachel. And I'll send this to you. I'm going to pull it up on my computer right now. I can't share it with you in this format.
Sure.
After they realize that Rachel's full of garbage, Rachel sends 2 pictures to this woman. And she said, oh, and because I'm honest and I'm not a liar, here for your own records are my pilot's license and RN license. That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm going to walk away from defending myself on this. They realized that she wasn't a pilot. When she started talking about doing helicopter rescues, when you talk about flying a helicopter, especially an air ambulance helicopter, as you probably can surmise, it's a very specific line of work. Being a pilot is one thing. We all know people in our lives who have a pilot's license, right? I want to go take, anyone can do it. You talk about being a helicopter pilot, and then you talk about it being in San Luis Obispo for Mercy Air and that you're doing these rescues, they call bullshit. That's where that plot line, that's where the nurse and fake pilot plot line come into play. Not with me, with the girls at work. I'm ready for
That's
your
crazy,
next
man.
question.
Well, my next question is that because my timeline is not super accurate, this all these the pilot, the nurse, and the lawyer stories are all happening concurrently.
She's such a good scammer.
How did you only knew the lawyer thing, or at the time, right? You didn't learn about the pilot and nurse thing.
That's
until
correct.
later?
I didn't learn until May of 2024. I found out she was scamming me in December 20th, 2023. In May, after Mark met with the women at the airport, who Rachel had been telling she's a pilot and she is a trauma nurse. By the way, the other thing Rachel did, which is unforgivable to me, is that she told the girls at the airport in an effort to garner sympathy. My second daughter attempted to commit self-harm of the worst kind. She's in the hospital.
Yeah.
And then she said, I need you girls to cover my shifts for me.
And how old? That's another thing I wanted to ask you. Like, how old was her second
16
daughter?
at the time. She's now 17.
Okay, but she really did
She's
have
got
2
4.
daughters, right? She's got 4. Okay, all the kids are one father or like multiple.
We
fathers?
believe with a high degree of certainty that daughter number 2 is not Mark's. There's reason to believe that that the others, at least one, or 2, may not be his.
You said on December 17th, and for you, this seemed like an eternity, but in the timeline, it's only 2 days. December 17th, you proposed to her. December 19th, 2 days later, she announces that she has cancer, but that she's also pregnant.
I got a message from her the day after that, on the 20th, when she was leaving the OB, which said, do you want to see a picture of your baby today?
She tells you that she has cancer, but she also tells you that she's pregnant. Like, how would you take either one of those news?
By the way, it's not just it's just 2. It's the hat trick if you're a hockey fan. It's 3. I'll marry you.
Oh yeah.
Pause for a couple days. Oh, I think I'm pregnant, and I think my cancer's back. So how does one deal with that? I said, you need someone that's strong enough to deal with this by your side. She knew at that point that she had me hook, line, and sinker. She's like, oh, he's speaking my language. I'm going to have him for a scam. And by the way, not for money, not for a boat, not for a car, not for a house. I lied to Harry for attention. That's what she told Mark. This was attention-seeking behavior.